Hi aspirants, in my lecture number 10 which deals with current affairs, I will discuss the two articles which have appeared in leading newspaper Indian Express on 17th April and 21st April respectively, relevant from the civil services mains examination point of view. In this lecture, I will show how the articles which have appeared can be mapped and linked to GS Mains Paper 2. These articles are sometimes value additions to what we study in GS Mains, and alternatively, probable questions can be framed for respective GS Mains Paper 2 as well. What we present in this lecture showcases our innovative ways to extract value from newspaper reading, especially articles. The first article, which has appeared in the Indian Express on 17th April 2021. The title of the article is "Don't Waste the Pandemic." The subtitle is "The Pandemic is an Opportunity to Critically Examine Our Education System and Change it for the Better." Now we move on to the context. The context of this particular article is recently government decided to cancel CBSE board exams and shut down its schools amid the rapid proliferation of COVID-19 cases. Then what is the impact on this school? These are basically the editorial insights. First, the impact on schools. The first point, government decided to cancel and postpone board examinations and close schools across the country due to the following reasons. First is rapid spreading of COVID in India. Second, public outcry. Third, signature campaigns of students and parents and PILs as well. Fourth, doctors' opinions on the spike have created intense anxiety and pressure. Now, the consequences of cancellation and shutdowns. First point, the productive potential of the entire generation has been reduced. This pandemic impacts more than 1.5 million schools across the nation. Third, learning gaps have affected the most vulnerable and marginalized children across the country. Fourth, millions of students do not have access to learning due to a lack of devices, connectivity, and teacher support. Fifth, for a large group of students, online exams proved to be a disaster. Seventh, high-stake examinations require connectivity, security, and protocols which is absent. Eighth, increasing school dropouts among vulnerable sections. Ninth, millions of children may remain without brick and mortar schools for some time. Finally, virtual curricula may focus solely on literacy and numeracy rather than engaging with the experiential. It may not encourage inquiry-based learning, integration of arts and sports, and the embedding of social and emotional learning in the curriculum. Now we move on to the next insight, an opportunity to reconstruct and revamp the education system. First, finding the means of assessment that are fair, robust, and remove dependency on time-tabled exams. Second, changing the ways to transact content in classrooms and frame questions that encourage a student to think requires a competency-based learning approach to be embedded in the system. Third, creativity and the ability to be resilient will be the most in-demand skills. Fourth, bridging gap between higher education institutions and schools to ensure seamless movement into tertiary learning. Fifth, The method of exam needs to be revisited along with the content of classroom learning. Sixth, the lesson plans in every classroom should be woven in a manner that emphasizes transversal competencies, cultural competencies, interaction and self-expression. A focus on taking care of oneself and managing daily life requirements. Finally, it is an opportunity to deconstruct the national education policy at the grassroots and urban level. Conclusion: to thrive in a globalized world using 21st century skills, learning must be seen as a pathway to attain well-being and happiness and create opportunities to contribute to humanity. The student will get voice only when learning transitions from the contextual to the conceptual. It is the need of the hour to look beyond cancellation and postponement of exams. It is imperative to critically look at the inequity in the systems and motivated policymakers to build a more equitable and resilient education system for the future. This particular topic is related to the General Studies paper 2. Now we move to another topic which is titled as A New Social Contract, which appeared in the Indian Express on 21st April 2021. The subtitle of this article is COVID is an opportunity to make structural changes to our largest health insurance and pension schemes. The context of this article is COVID-19 reminded the world that a modern state is a welfare state, where governments worldwide launched 1,600 plus new social protection programs in 2020. It also reinforces the importance of resources. Editorial insights. First, the sustainability of social security lies in raising India's per capita GDP ranking from 138. Second, there is an urgent need to reform India's two biggest health insurance and pension schemes. Third, both employee state insurance scheme and employee provident fund have hostages rather than clients, with no option of opting out or choosing an alternative or a competitor. Since the 1950s, though touted as employee welfare schemes, both had failed in serving their clients in times of crisis. Now we will discuss the salient features of employee state insurance scheme and employee provident fund scheme. First is employee state insurance scheme. The first point, it is India's richest and biggest health insurance scheme with 13 crores people covered and rupees 80,000 crores in cash. Employers with more than 10 employees make a mandatory 4% payroll deduction for employees earning up to rupees 21,000 per month. Despite that, its coverage is limited to only 10% of India's population. The salient features of Employee Provident Fund. It is India's biggest pension scheme with a rupees 12 lakh crore corpus and 6.5 crore contributors. Employers with more than 20 employees make mandatory 24% payroll deductions for employees earning up to rupees 15,000 per month. It covers 10% of India's labor force. Now there is a need for reforms. What are the reforms which has been recommended? First, the coverage ratio of ESIS is only 10% of India's population, and coverage ratio of Employee Provident Fund is only 10% of the labor force. Among them, 60% of accounts and 50% of the registered employees are inactive. ESIC's unspent reserves are larger than India's healthcare budgetary allocation. EPF, that is the Employee Provident Fund's 1991 creation of a defined benefit component, can now only be made solvent with an unfair benefit cut or taxpayers' haircut. Despite EPF administrative costs make it the world's most expensive government securities mutual fund, still its services are poor and use outdated technology. The next point, there is a need for updating the risk sharing framework in societies because current structures are breaking up due to the following reasons. Due to changing roles of women, longer careers, disruptive technologies, hyper-globalization. Then we move to the next point. There is a need for nuanced social security redistribution across time, incomes, and financial burden bearing. The need is to have the political will in fixing the problems of EPF and ESIS, but not to go behind unaffordable universal basic income proposals. What are the issues with the current system? First is poor coverage ratios. Second, high costs, including administrative costs. Third, unsatisfied customers. Fourth, metrics confused with goals. Fifth, jail provisions. Sixth, excessive corruption and low expertise. Seventh, rude and unaccountable staff. Lastly, lack of competition in the market. The above problems can't be solved by using technical solutions, but can be solved by adaptive solutions such as the three reforms. What are these three reforms? First, we will discuss structure. Structure, first point. The combined roles of policymaker, regulator and service providers have been hampering the delivery potential of both EPF and ESIS. Splitting roles is a precondition for performance because goals, strategy and skills are different. Third, an independent policymaker would strive for more than a 10% coverage ratio. The next point, an independent regulator would ensure the balancing of the claims ratio. The next point, an independent service provider would invest heavily in technology and skill development. Next point, it would lead to completion from NPS to EPF. Then we move to another point, ending VIP opt-out by merging CGHS with ESIS. Raising enforceability by making EF contribution voluntary. Then we move to another point, improving portability by delinking accounts from employers. Finally, targeting universalization by simultaneously ending minimum employee headcount and introducing absolute contribution caps. Then we move on to the next reform. The next reform is governance. The large governing boards of ESIS and EFPO have hampered meaningful discussions, making decisions, and exercising oversight. Second point, the need is to fill this governance deficit by smaller boards with less than 15 members, age limits of 70 years, term limit of 10 years, domain expertise, active subcommittees, providing real powers. Then we move to the final reform, which is concerned with leadership. The present leadership of generalized bureaucrats has to be changed with professional chief executives because health and pensions needs complex skills that develops over time. A less generalist, non-transitory and non-cadred chief executive would create a new tone from the top around performance management, technology and service outcomes. Finally, we come to the conclusion. Equality is democracy's fundamental premise. India's democracy has been better at the complex trade-offs that create equality, though the gap remains. Social security can blunt structural and COVID inequality when combined with complementary policies like formalization, financialization, and better government schools. The non-fiscal reforms of EPF and EISIS are a great place to effect structural changes for equality. This article probably will fall under the ambit of General Studies Mains Paper 2. Before I sign off, do tune in for my next videos. Please share this video with your friends and subscribe in large numbers. We really appreciate your encouragement and constructive suggestions. Thanks.